All right, let's dive deep into A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. It's a really fascinating book,
It is, yeah.
part memoir, part spiritual guidebook,
Hmm.
and draws on some, I think, really profound ideas from A Course in Miracles.
Right.
Are you ready to kind of get your mind blown open by Williamson's take on love and transformation and all that good stuff?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So one of the things that I think makes A Return to Love so powerful is how Williamson shares her own personal journey with A Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
Like she's not just preaching the concept, she's talking about how she grappled with them,
Hmm.
how she even resisted them at first.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so relatable for a lot of people, you know?
Totally.
She's like, look, I studied theology, but even I had trouble with this.
Yeah,
I pushed back against all this Christian language.
totally.
Like,
And it took a pretty,
a pretty dark period in her life.
yeah, deep depression for her to really open up to it. What do you think that says about like how we approach things that really challenge us, that challenge our comfort zones?
I, I think it makes you wonder what kinds of roadblocks, internal roadblocks we have in place
Yeah.
where, she was in pain seeking answers.
Mm.
And the courts really offered a new way of seeing the world,
Yeah.
way out of that kind of turmoil, the emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately what fuels her passion to share it through Return to Love.
Yeah. It's like she became this like translator taking these sometimes really dense spiritual concepts and
Mhm.
making them really accessible.
Totally.
So let's dive into one of those concepts, this idea of the perfect you that A Course in Miracles talks about.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds kind of, I don't know, self-helpy maybe at first, right?
It can sound a bit like that,
Yeah.
but I think a good way to think about it is like, Michelangelo discovering a masterpiece within a block of marble. Right? The Course is suggesting that this perfect version of you, it already exists.
Hmm.
It's like this potential just waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah.
And it's not about achieving perfection in the traditional sense,
Right.
but rather it's about uncovering this inherent worthiness and love
Yeah.
that's already within us.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's our true essence.
Okay.
How does that land for you?
I mean, I can see how that could be really empowering,
Yeah.
especially if you've been like struggling with self-doubt or feeling like you're not good enough. It's like this total shift in perspective.
100%. And that shift in perspective is key
Hmm.
to understanding how the Course approaches this whole idea of sin and guilt.
Okay.
And, before you think we're going all fire and brimstone here,
Yeah.
the Course reframes sin not as some kind of moral failing,
Hmm.
but as a separation from love. And this is where this concept of the ego comes in.
Okay, so the ego isn't necessarily like this evil villain, but more like a force that kind of leads us away from love.
Think of it as like this miscreation of thought,
Okay.
this voice in your head that's convinced you're separate from this source of love.
Right.
And it uses all sorts of tricks to keep you feeling that way.
Mm.
Fear, judgment, the need to be right all the time, that constant comparing ourselves to others.
Yeah.
That's all the ego
Yeah.
trying to keep us feeling separate,
Mhm.
which ultimately keeps us from experiencing true love and connection.
So if the ego is the voice that's telling us we're not good enough, we're not worthy of love, what is the antidote to that? Is
Yeah.
that where the Holy Spirit comes in?
You got it. And I know the term Holy Spirit can be a bit loaded for some people.
Yeah.
So think of it more as like a force of consciousness that guides us back to love, back to that state of wholeness.
Okay.
It's about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
to a power that knows what's truly best for us.
Okay. But isn't surrender kind of passive?
Yeah.
Like giving up?
Well, not in this sense.
Okay.
It's more about, I think, consciously choosing love over fear.
Okay.
Think about it. When you're making a decision out of fear,
Mm-hmm.
you're usually trying to control the outcome.
Yeah.
You're trying to protect yourself from getting hurt.
Right.
But when you choose love,
Yeah.
you're opening yourself up to possibility, to connection,
Mm-hmm.
even if it means stepping outside your comfort zone. And that's the kind of surrender we're talking about here.
So it's about taking responsibility for like aligning ourselves with love, even when it's scary, even when it's challenging.
Exactly.
And is that where the idea of miracles comes in?
Boom. You got it.
Okay.
Williamson, she emphasizes that miracles aren't supernatural events,
Mm-hmm.
but rather shifts in perception.
Okay.
It's about seeing through the ego's illusions
Mhm.
and recognizing the power of love to heal and transform.
Right.
It's like, those optical illusions where you see one thing, then suddenly your perception shifts and you see something completely different.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So it's about changing the lens through which we view the world, you know,
So instead of seeing everything through the filter of fear and lack, we start to see the love and the abundance that's already there.
100%.
Okay.
And what's really fascinating is that this aligns with some pretty mind-blowing concepts in modern physics.
Okay.
Newtonian physics emphasizes objectivity,
Mm-hmm.
but quantum physics shows us that the observer actually influences what's being observed.
Wow.
Similarly, the Course suggests that by changing our minds about the world, we can actually change the world itself.
That's pretty wild.
It is, right.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all ties together.
Yeah.
But how does this play out in our relationships?
Right.
Because Williamson calls relationships assignments, almost like tests or opportunities for growth.
Right. And she makes this distinction between special relationships, which are often based on ego needs and expectations,
Okay.
and holy relationships, where love and forgiveness create space for true connection.
So special relationships are more about what we can get out of the other person, while holy relationships are more about seeing the divine spark in each other,
Yes.
even when it's messy, even when it's imperfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She challenges that whole romantic ideal of, finding the one who's going to complete us,
Right.
because that sets us up for disappointment, right?
Yeah.
It puts the burden of our happiness on someone else.
Right.
In a holy relationship, you're not looking to be completed. You're looking to connect on a deeper level, to grow and learn together.
And that growth can sometimes involve some really tough lessons.
For sure.
Like she talks about how relationships can really trigger our deepest wounds and insecurities.
Absolutely. And those are the gold.
Right.
Those are the opportunities.
Yeah.
She encourages us to see those challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for healing and transformation.
Mhm.
It's about choosing love,
Mhm.
even when it's hard, even when we feel like running away. Remember that anecdote she shares about the couple that comes to her for counseling?
The one where the woman was constantly complaining about her husband.
Yeah.
But Williamson challenged her to look at her own role in the dynamic,
Exactly.
to see how her own anger and resentment were contributing to the conflict.
Such a good one.
Right.
It's a powerful reminder that we often project our own unresolved issues onto our partners,
Mm-hmm.
and that true healing in relationships starts with taking responsibility for our own baggage,
Yeah.
for our own contribution to the dynamic.
So it's not about blaming each other,
Right.
but about understanding how our own wounds, our own patterns are playing out in the relationship.
Absolutely.
And then choosing to respond with love and compassion, even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about seeing the relationship as a mirror, reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves that need healing.
Hmm.
And that's where the transformative power of love really comes into play.
So instead of trying to change our partners, we focus on changing ourselves,
Huh?
on becoming more loving and accepting
Right.
both of ourselves and of them.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where that frog prince analogy comes in. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
She talks about how instead of trying to turn the frog into a prince,
Mm-hmm.
we need to learn to love the frog for who he is.
Right.
It's about recognizing the beauty and worth in the other person without trying to force them into some idealized mold.
Yeah.
It's about accepting them as they are, warts and all.
And that acceptance is ultimately what allows them to transform, to become the best version of themselves.
100%.
Because when we feel truly loved and accepted, we're more likely to open up, to let go of our defenses, to embrace our authentic selves.
Right. We feel safe.
Yeah.
Safe to be ourselves.
Okay, so love becomes this catalyst for growth,
Yeah.
both for ourselves and for the other person.
Absolutely.
It's not about control or manipulation, but about creating a space where both people can really flourish.
Right. And that's why Williamson emphasizes that the most important relationship we have is the one with ourselves.
Yeah.
Because when we learn to love and accept ourselves unconditionally, we're better able to extend that love and acceptance to others.
Okay, this is making me think about all sorts of things in my own life.
that.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, there's one more concept I want to touch on in this part.
Okay.
And that is the body as a temple.
Right?
Now, this isn't about being physically perfect
Well,
or adhering to like some strict diet or exercise regimen.
yeah, no, it's not about six-pack abs.
Right.
Yeah,
It's about the body as a vehicle for expressing love into the world.
right.
It's about treating our bodies with respect and care, not because we're trying to achieve some external ideal,
Hmm.
but because our bodies are the instruments through which we experience life,
Right.
through which we connect with others, share our gifts.
Absolutely. It's about appreciating our bodies for what they are,
Yeah.
rather than constantly trying to fix them or improve them.
Okay, and she even challenges some of the conventional thinking around vanity and body image.
Yeah, she does.
Remember the story about her date with the impeccably dressed man?
Oh, yes.
The one where she initially judged him for being too well dressed,
Yeah.
but then realized that it was actually his way of showing respect and care.
Yeah, and that was her stuff, right?
Yeah.
That was her judgment coming in,
Yeah,
projecting her own stuff onto him.
totally.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that we often make those snap judgments based on appearances,
Yeah,
but those judgments might not reflect the other person's true intentions,
totally.
and that we might be projecting our own insecurities or anxieties onto them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
And she challenges us to look beneath the surface,
Mm-hmm.
to see the love and intention behind the actions,
Yeah.
even if they don't fit our preconceived notions. It's about choosing to see the best in people,
Yeah.
even in those quirks and imperfections.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to leave it for this part,
Okay.
because it makes me think about all the times I've judged myself and others based on just superficial things.
Totally.
It's a powerful reminder to be more compassionate and understanding,
Yeah,
both towards ourselves and toward others.
absolutely.
Yeah, and to recognize that true beauty doesn't come from conforming to some external standard,
Right.
but from embracing our unique individuality,
Yeah.
from expressing our love and creativity in authentic ways.
Oh, wow. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
I know, right?
There's so much more to dive into.
Yeah.
I'm excited to continue this conversation in the next part.
Me too, me too.
Okay, awesome.
All right. All right.
This is getting good.
It is. It is.
Okay, welcome back. I'm still kind of buzzing from that last conversation about love and relationships and the body as a temple. I don't know about you, but
Oh, yeah. Lots to think about.
there's so much to unpack there.
Totally.
Yeah,
Williamson really packs a punch in this book.
she does.
She really does.
And she manages to tackle some really, like, deep, profound spiritual concepts.
Yeah.
But in a way that's also really relatable to everyday life.
Yes.
It's not just theory.
Mm.
It's like, how do we actually live these principles
Yes.
in our relationships, in our work,
Totally.
in our connection to our own bodies?
100%. I think that's what makes it so compelling.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's not just telling us what to think. She's inviting us to kind of question our assumptions, see things from a new perspective.
Totally. And that can be exciting, but it can also be a little uncomfortable sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
She definitely pushes us outside of our comfort zones.
He does.
And one thing that really struck me was her discussion about the ego's resistance to happiness.
Oh.
It's like we've been programmed to believe that we don't deserve to be happy.
Right.
So we're constantly finding ways to sabotage ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed that in your own life?
Oh, absolutely. It's like there's this inner voice that's like, who are you to be happy? You haven't earned it yet. Or if you let yourself be truly happy, something bad is going to happen.
Right.
It's crazy how insidious that kind of thinking can be.
Oh, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And Williamson, she challenges us to recognize those thought patterns and start choosing happiness in the present moment.
Yeah.
Not just as some future reward. Like, joy is our birthright. We don't have to wait for permission to experience it.
I love that. It's so empowering.
It is, right.
Yeah, and it makes me think about how we often get so caught up in this idea of like potential
Yes.
as if our worth is tied to what we might achieve in the future.
Yes. And she talks about how the word potential can actually be a trap,
Oh, okay.
keeping us stuck in a state of striving and never feeling like we're quite good enough yet.
Yeah.
We're always focused on what we could be rather than appreciating who we are right now.
So it becomes this like burden we carry around instead of a source of inspiration.
Totally.
Yeah. So how do we shift out of that mindset? How do we move from potential to capacity, as she suggests?
I think it starts with recognizing that we already possess everything we need to live a fulfilling life.
Okay.
Like, we have the talents, we have the skills, we have the experiences
Hmm.
that we can draw on right now.
Yeah.
And it's about focusing on taking action, expressing our creativity,
Okay.
making a contribution to the world, no matter how small it might seem.
Yeah.
Just doing what we can with what we have in this present moment.
I love that it takes the pressure off of having to achieve some grand future goal
Right.
and allows us to find joy and fulfillment in the everyday.
Yes.
Yeah, and it makes me think about something else Williamson emphasizes, and that is the importance of spiritual practice.
Yes.
So she talks about love not just as a feeling, but as a disciplined practice,
Yes.
something we cultivate through conscious effort, right?
Right. It's like building a muscle.
Yeah,
You've got to train your mind to choose love over fear, and that takes dedication.
right. So it's not about passively waiting for love to find us, but
Yeah.
about actively seeking it out, about making choices that align us with love in every moment.
Yes.
And that can be as simple as practicing gratitude, spending time in nature, offering a kind word to a stranger.
Totally. Yeah. She draws on the Course's guidance, spending time with the Holy Spirit, engaging in practices like meditation, prayer,
Hmm.
to strengthen our connection to love.
Right. And even she gives some practical tips, starting the day with 5 minutes of dedicated spiritual practice, which can really set the tone for the whole day.
Yeah, 100%. It's those small, consistent choices that can create a ripple effect in our lives and in the world.
Yeah, speaking of ripple effects, I love that story she tells about the teenage girls and the Christy Brinkley poster.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's such a powerful illustration of this principle of abundance.
Did it?
You remember how the girls were trying to convince themselves that Christy Brinkley wasn't that beautiful?
Oh, yeah.
They were basically resisting their own desire to be beautiful.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They were so focused on finding flaws in Christy Brinkley
Yeah.
that they were missing the opportunity to just appreciate beauty,
Totally.
both in her and in themselves.
Yeah, and Williamson points out that they were actually diminishing their own beauty by doing that.
Right.
She encouraged them to bless Christy Brinkley's beauty as a way of opening themselves up to their own.
Mm-hmm.
It's like recognizing that there's enough beauty, enough success, enough happiness to go around.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to tear others down to build ourselves up.
That's such a good point. It's when we focus on scarcity, we create more scarcity.
Right.
But when we focus on abundance,
Abundance.
we create more abundance.
100%.
Yeah, and that abundance mentality can apply to every aspect of our lives, not just beauty.
Mm-hmm.
It's about trusting that there's enough for everyone, that we can all thrive and succeed
Yeah.
without having to compete or compare ourselves to others.
Yes. And, I was actually surprised by how openly she talks about money in the book,
Oh.
because that's a topic that often gets labeled as taboo in spiritual circles.
Right.
But she reframes money as an energy,
Okay.
something that can be used for either holy or unholy purposes.
Right. So it's not about demonizing money itself,
No.
but about becoming aware of our own beliefs and attitudes around it.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And she talks about how our judgments about money often reflect our own fears and insecurities.
Like that story where she was driving through a wealthy neighborhood
Oh, yeah.
and just automatically assumed that everyone who lived there was some corporate fat cat exploiting the world.
Yeah.
And it was her own ego trying to keep her small,
Right.
to justify her own lack of abundance.
Yeah, a classic example of how our thoughts create our reality.
Totally.
Yeah.
And she encourages us to shift from that scarcity mentality to one of abundance, recognizing that there's enough for everyone. And that includes us.
Including us. Yeah.
And it's also about being responsible with our money, using it in ways that align with our values.
Totally.
Yeah.
She even talks about the importance of paying for services rendered,
Yeah.
of honoring the value that others bring to the world.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected,
Yes,
that our financial choices impact others.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us to another really fascinating aspect of the book, which is her perspective on careers.
Okay.
She encourages us to view our work as a ministry,
Oh, wow.
a way of expressing our love and serving the world,
Okay.
you know?
She uses that example of her friend who's running for political office
Oh, yeah.
and how she advised him to surrender his campaign to the Holy Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
to let love guide his actions and his words.
Yeah, it's a pretty radical concept, especially in the world of politics,
Totally, it is.
which can be so cutthroat.
Right.
But imagine if we all approached our work with that kind of intention, with the goal of making a positive impact, not just climbing the ladder or achieving personal gain.
It's about seeing our work as an extension of who we are,
Mm-hmm.
as an opportunity to share our gifts, our talents with the world.
Yes.
Yeah, and she even suggests that, like, when we align our work with a higher purpose,
Mm-hmm.
worldly success often follows naturally.
Yeah, it's like we become a conduit for something bigger than ourselves, and that attracts positive energy and opportunities.
Okay, so we're talking about aligning our work with a higher purpose.
Yeah.
But what about creativity?
Oh, yeah.
How does that fit into this whole love-centered approach?
Well, Williamson talks about creativity as an expression of our divine nature.
Okay.
She reminds us that true genius isn't about creating something entirely new,
Mm-hmm.
but about tapping into this wellspring of inspiration that already exists within us.
Okay.
It's about expressing what's already there, waiting to be revealed.
So it's not about striving to be original or innovative, but just about allowing our unique voice and perspective to shine through.
Right, and trusting that we have something valuable to offer,
Yeah.
even if it's not perfect or groundbreaking.
And that we don't have to wait for permission or validation to express our creativity.
Yes, 100%
We can start right now,
right
in
now.
whatever way feels authentic to us.
Yeah, like that story she tells about uh, the man who advised her to see every customer in her bookstore as a potential sale.
Oh, yeah.
She was like, nope, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, she completely rejected that approach.
Yeah, yeah.
She chose to see her store as a church,
Yes.
like a gathering place for souls.
I love that story. It's such a beautiful reframing.
It is.
It's about shifting from that transactional mindset to one of service and connection.
Yeah. And it reminds us that love can show up in like unexpected places,
Yes,
even in seemingly mundane aspects of our daily lives.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of the seemingly mundane, she also addresses the body in a really interesting way.
Okay.
Remember we were talking about the body as a temple.
Right. And how it's not about physical perfection,
Yeah.
but about treating our bodies with respect and care because they're the vehicles through which we experience life.
Yes, exactly.
And she challenges a lot of the conventional thinking around body image, vanity, and aging.
Mm-hmm.
Like she encourages us to view clothes and personal style as expressions of love and care,
Yes,
rather than just tools for like seduction or self-promotion.
Right.
It's
exactly.
about reclaiming the body as a sacred instrument, a way of bringing beauty and joy into the world.
Yeah, and letting go of that pressure to conform to some external ideal of beauty.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And she even talks about weight and aging,
Yeah.
suggesting that like our obsession with these things often stems from fear and a lack of self-love.
Right, remember that story about how she finally let go of her weight obsession when she surrendered it to a higher power?
Oh, yeah.
And she realized that her weight was more about her emotional state than her physical body.
Right. That's such a powerful reminder that true beauty comes from within,
Yes,
from a place of self-acceptance and love.
totally.
And she challenges us to view aging as a process of growth and wisdom
Yes.
rather than something to be feared and resisted.
Exactly.
So instead of trying to hold on to youth, we embrace the beauty and the wisdom that come with each stage of life.
100%. And it's about recognizing that our bodies are constantly changing.
Yeah.
And that's part of the natural flow of life.
Okay, this is making me think about my relationship with my own body in a whole new light.
Me too.
But before we dive into that, let's talk about another big topic that Williamson tackles, and that is death and reincarnation.
Yes.
And she approaches this in a really, I think, comforting and even inspiring way.
She does.
Yeah.
Yeah, she suggests that death is not an end, but a continuation,
Okay.
a transition to another realm of existence.
Okay. So instead of fearing death, we see it as a natural part of life's journey, a transition to something new and unknown.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And she reminds us that love transcends all boundaries, even the boundary of death.
Wow, that's really comforting.
It is, right.
It makes me think about my loved ones who've passed in a different way.
Me too. It opens up this whole new realm of possibility.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Relationships, work, creativity, the body, even death.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that a return to love is about so much more than just romantic love.
Right. It's about a whole way of being in the world.
Exactly. It's about choosing love in every moment,
Mm.
in every aspect of our lives.
Yes.
It's about seeing the world through the lens of love, even when it's challenging.
Totally.
And Williamson reminds us that our personal transformation is ultimately what leads to global transformation.
Yes.
Right.
It all starts with us.
As we heal ourselves, we heal the world.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious, what's resonating with you the most so far? What's standing out as particularly relevant to your own life? That's a good question.
Okay, welcome back to our deep dive into Marianne Williamson's A Return to Love. We've been exploring some really, I think, profound ideas about, personal transformation and forgiveness and the power of love to really change the world.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
She really challenges us to rethink our assumptions and embrace a more love-centered approach to life.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that keeps coming up for me is this idea that our individual choices, like our everyday actions, can actually contribute to a more loving and compassionate society.
Right.
It's a pretty empowering thought, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by, the state of the world
Yeah.
and think that our individual actions don't really matter.
Right.
But Williamson, she reminds us that we each have a role to play in creating a better future.
Yeah, she talks about the end of the world, not as a literal apocalypse,
Right.
but as this transformation into heaven, driven by healed minds and hearts, guided by the Holy Spirit.
Right. It's about shifting our collective consciousness from fear to love.
And she connected to the concept of the prodigal son, suggesting that our generation, after exploring the darker aspects of human nature, is now yearning for a return to a more wholesome way of being.
It's like we've been on this long journey of separation, of exploring the limits of like ego-driven desires.
Yeah.
And now we're ready to come home to a way of life that's more aligned with love and our true essence.
Exactly. And she emphasizes that forgiveness is essential for this transformation, both on a personal and a global level.
Right, because holding on to resentment and anger only perpetuates that cycle of negativity.
Yeah.
Forgiveness, as Williamson explains it, is about releasing those toxic emotions, not for the other person's sake, but for our own.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that forgiveness isn't condoning harmful actions,
Right.
but freeing ourselves from the burden of carrying that pain and resentment.
And she even talks about forgiving ourselves, which
Yeah.
can be one of the hardest things to do, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We tend to be our own harshest critics.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hold ourselves to these impossible standards, replaying past mistakes and dwelling on perceived flaws.
Right.
But the Course reminds us that we are all worthy of love and forgiveness, including ourselves.
Yeah, it's about extending that same compassion and understanding that we offer to others inward, towards ourselves.
Yes.
It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, constantly evolving and learning.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how Williamson connects forgiveness to healing, both personal and global.
Yeah.
She suggests that forgiveness is the key to unlocking miracles, to creating a more peaceful and harmonious world.
Yeah, she even talks about how forgiveness can heal cultural wounds, bridging divides and fostering greater understanding between different groups of people.
Right. It's such a powerful idea.
It is.
It makes me think about the current state of the world with all the polarization and conflict. What if we could approach these challenges with a spirit of forgiveness, seeking common ground rather than perpetuating division?
It's a radical notion, but I think that's what makes Williamson's message so compelling.
Yeah.
She challenges us to think differently,
Yeah.
to embrace a more loving and compassionate perspective, even in the face of adversity.
Right. And she doesn't just leave us with these lofty ideals.
Yeah.
She offers practical guidance on how to actually put these principles into practice.
Right.
Remember how she talks about love as a disciplined practice?
Yeah.
She encourages us to engage in spiritual practices that cultivate love and forgiveness.
Right, like spending time in nature, practicing gratitude, offering a kind word to a stranger.
Exactly.
It's about making those small, everyday choices that align us with love.
And those small choices can have a ripple effect.